Hi, welcome to this video. On July 12th at 7:47 p.m. Pacific time, there is a new moon partial solar eclipse happening in Cancer. The new moon will be at 20 degrees, 41 minutes of Cancer, as the south node in Leo is in 5 degrees, 53 minutes of Leo. So they're actually approximately 15 degrees away from each other. So it's a pretty far conjunction, and because of this, it's a partial eclipse. So this new moon in Cancer, conjunct the north node in Leo, could kind of be referring to your home and your family and your children and a new beginning in regards to those things, and maybe seeing some of the shadow sides that need to change and be brought into a higher state, especially when it comes to having more fun with your family and expressing more creativity and maybe even drama at times, but not in a negative way necessarily, but more in a fun kind of way. But it could actually bring up some family drama if there is drama brewing at this time in your family. But ultimately, it's about having a fresh start and attempting to have more fun. I mean, it is the summer after all, so this is the time to really have some fun. And then this new moon is almost exactly opposite Pluto over here in Capricorn. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a little line. That's the opposition. And it is retrograde right now as well in Capricorn. So this has been shaking things up ultimately in regards to your home and your career life. And, you know, sometimes Capricorn can be a bit too serious. And right now, of course, Saturn being in Capricorn, it's giving us a double dose of that seriousness. And we really need to focus on nurturing a little more during this new moon, nurturing our home life, our family, and not take life so seriously. Kind of nurture your own emotions, be gentler with yourself, and not be so hard on yourself. Because this Pluto in Capricorn has been hard on us as a collective since 2008. It's been making us much more aware of the problems in the world, what needs to transform when it comes to authority, what needs to transform when it comes to our responsibility to the planet, our responsibility for ourselves, our responsibility for our lives. And it needs, basically, the world needs to transform in the way that it deals with business and all kinds of stuff going on, you know, a bunch of stuff coming to light. So it's making us aware of our part within that, what we are responsible for, and how we can take more responsibility, even if these things seem out of our control, because it's really about taking our power back. And then with this opposition, like, there may have been times where you've just neglected to take care of yourself emotionally or take care of your family, like from a more nurturing perspective. And maybe you've been too hard hitting at times when it comes to like the world's problems. Maybe you're getting overwhelmed with your career or the world's problems, and it's like, you know, you just got to kind of hone in on that emotional foundation and get back on track when it comes to how you feel and how you feel in terms of your family and how your family feels. So that's kind of what that could be about. And then there's also a Grand Trine happening with this new moon. So trining Neptune and Jupiter and back to the moon and the sun in Cancer. So this Grand Trine is definitely, and also Jupiter just went direct July 10th, and with Jupiter going direct, this is going to help us to start moving forward with the things that we have become aware of at a deeper level, and expanding your horizons in regards to certain things that you became aware of about yourself, about what gifts you may have or what you may have to contribute to the world. And it's about expanding and creating and allowing for abundance to occur as a result of sharing something deep from within yourself. And this can be something more emotional, or it could be something that, like a wisdom, a deep wisdom that you carry, or it could even just be your own story that can help to transform others, or it could be a number of things, of course. But yeah, and then with the Neptune retrograde in Pisces, trining Jupiter and the new moon in Cancer, this is a time for tapping into collective energies, tuning into yourself more, tuning into your own soul, tuning into spirituality. Of course, when you're tuning into your own soul, that's really what spirituality is, right? And then focusing on where you can make the most difference in terms of how you're feeling, because this new moon in Cancer is really helping us to become more aware of how we're feeling in our day-to-day lives, about our home, about our family, and just really how we feel in general, and how we can take care of ourselves more. And when we're tapping into collective energies, this also can bring forward what you can do to nurture the collective, and what you can tap into collectively also to nurture yourself. So this could be a time for tapping into healing energies, or going to a healer, or going to someone who holds great wisdom with the Jupiter in Scorpio, and just gaining new insights about yourself and in your intuition and how you're feeling in general, because it is very emotional, with the Grand Trine all in water signs. It is very emotional in nature, so it helps you to tune into that area of life. And there's also another Grand Trine happening with the Earth signs. So there's Saturn, Trine Uranus, Trine Venus, Trine Saturn, Grand Trine. And this would be a grand sextile, but the degrees are way off. Like, these are 2 degrees, 4 degrees, 3 degrees, and these are 13, 16, and 20. And this is a pretty far orb, but I counted it since it is a Grand Trine. But yeah, anyways, 2, 3, and 4 with Venus in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, and Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn is retrograde. So this is putting a really interesting sort of vibe on our relationships, because we've got Saturn, which is very restrictive, and Uranus, which is very freeing. So this could be making us aware of the restrictions or limitations within our relationship, and how we can break free of those limitations and restrictions in our relationship. So this could be a time of taking more responsibility for your part in the relationship, and also doing more unexpected things, and being more spontaneous, and maybe doing things together that is out in nature, or somewhere where you can enjoy your senses and also have novel experiences involving your senses. And Venus in Virgo itself is making us aware of the health of our relationship, and between these two planets, Saturn the restrictor and Uranus the freer, it's like where are you being too restrictive, and where are you maybe being too freeing or whatever, or maybe even where you're not being free enough, or, you know, it's a balancing act between the restriction and the freedom. But it could just be a time for actually releasing yourself of certain burdens that are not necessarily yours to keep, and also taking responsibility for the things that are yours to take responsibility for within a relationship. So, you know, it's kind of a shifting of responsibility to each person, like the respective responsibilities that really belong to each person. And it helps just gauge our whole health of our relationship, and we might even be focused on our health as well. So if you're not in a relationship, then you might be focusing on health and wanting to make yourself more beautiful, and there could be that sort of freedom and restriction thing happening. And, you know, another thing that came to mind is that in terms of indulgence versus health too, because Venus represents indulgence, and then Virgo represents health, and then Saturn is restriction, and Uranus is more freedom, and Uranus and Taurus is ruled by Venus, so it is a bit more indulgent. So you might be oscillating between over-restricting yourself in certain areas, or, you know, being overly indulgent and free in, you know, in regards to an area where you might want to like cut back on something, whether it's like sugar, alcohol, whatever you indulge in. It's like this whole push and pull effect between restricting and freeing yourself. And that's not always the most balanced way of dealing with things. Of course, there's nothing in Libra except for Maki, which I'm not going to talk about in this video, but there's nothing helping us out over here to keep the balance. And anyways, yeah, I'm rambling. But yeah, ultimately moderation is key, and that's also what Venus and Virgo could be about, is moderation. Okay, and it's moderating between these extremes of Saturn and Uranus. So then Mercury at 17 degrees of Leo is square Jupiter in Scorpio. So, there it is. Okay, so these are square. Mercury, square Jupiter. Mercury in Leo, square Jupiter in Scorpio. So, with this square, this could be a time of a bit of drama flaring up. Especially in your communications. Maybe you exaggerate something a little too much. Maybe you're exaggerating your deeper emotions a little more than you should. In fact, Jupiter could be just having all these deep emotions coming out to the surface right now with Jupiter just going direct. And things could be exaggerated greatly. And maybe you want to communicate these things, but it comes out way more like dramatic than you intended. Well, then that could create issues, right? So this could be about expressing deep emotions, but just make sure not to exaggerate those emotions in the negative or make them sound more dramatic than they really are. Because then, you know, it causes problems. But it could also help you to tap into and become more aware of your deeper self, your deeper intuition, and what you're truly feeling on some level, on the subconscious level. And you'll be able to communicate those things or express those things even creatively, more easily. It just got to keep some sort of moderation, again, in terms of how you communicate it. And Pluto, sextile Neptune, right here, is in conjunct Mercury in Leo right here, creating a yod. So there's Neptune, Pluto, Mercury, and that's a yod. So in conjunct inconjunct sextile right here. So this is helping us to tap into collective energies, especially ones that need to transform, things that need to be brought to light, especially people who might be suffering. And Mercury and Leo will help us to bring more awareness through its powers of communication and expression, maybe even through arts and such. Like I mentioned in the last video, the Yod with Venus and Leo. This could be a time of creating something that brings to light these collective issues that are bubbling under the surface at this time in our world that might just need a bit more light shown on it so that it can transform and help people who are not doing very well at this time. And then we've got Chiron in Aries in 2 degrees, and it just went retrograde July 5th and is square Saturn within 2 degrees. Right there's the square. So there's Chiron in 2 degrees of Aries and Saturn in 4 degrees of Capricorn. So this could be bringing up issues with authority figures and issues of being in your own power, because I feel like what Chiron in Aries is bringing up for us is overcoming victim mentalities, victim tendencies, and becoming more courageous in the face of your wounds. Not allowing these stories to be a definition of who you are, but becoming a force for healing, of course, but also like a healing warrior kind of feeling, like cutting through the pain and bringing the pain to the surface, but doing it in a way where you are not your pain, you are not your stories, but you are who you are as a result of those stories. It doesn't mean that you are those things, though. It means that you have overcome those things. So that's important to remember. But with it square Saturn and Capricorn retrograde, it can bring up some fear and some feelings around authority figures and father figures, people like that who may have inflicted wounds upon you and caused some of the suffering that you have experienced in your life. And it's a time for really overcoming that. And I think it also is bringing up wounds that have occurred to men, especially because, something that's been brought up a lot lately is this toxic masculinity thing. And I think Chiron and Aries is helping us to become aware of the wounds that have been inflicted upon men as a result of the systems and the structures in our society that have instilled these ideas into young boys about what a man is. And so this is a time of healing some of those stories, the masculinity stories that are not necessarily, they're not reflective of what a real man truly could be. Because ultimately, the divine masculine has been distorted by our society about what a man really is and who a man can be and what it means to be a man. So, and overcoming the violence that has been a result of that, of being told that that's what you need to be a man, is violent or angry or stuff like that, where it's a distortion of true divine masculinity. And then also Chiron is also in conjunct Venus. So Chiron in Aries is in conjunct Venus and Virgo. And that is also maybe healing the feminine who have been affected by that as well, because you know, what is done to the other, you know, because we've instilled these things into our boys, it has been reflected back through how, like, the women have reacted. Because the way I see this is that the men are the actors and the women are the reflectors. And so it's like you know, the actions that have been taken by men have affected the women in whatever way, or the feminine and the masculine, we'll say, because, you know, there are others who don't identify as male or female nowadays. So I want to honor that and not ignore that. So we'll just say feminine, masculine, because, you know, in astrology it is looked at in a more categorical way, where it's like, you know, more dualistic in some ways. But I do think that, you know, what's cool about, you know, Mercury and, well, you know, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and then, you know, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is considered a hermaphrodite, so, you know, it's still there in astrology. All right. Anyways, the Chiron in conjunct Venus is also possibly bringing up the wounds that have been inflicted on you as a result of this toxic masculinity. And it could be just a time of looking at those wounds and healing them, and healing your own divine femininity as well, because the divine feminine has been just as distorted as the divine masculine, and is in some ways being even more distorted right now, because women believe that they have to be a certain way in order to become successful in this world. Because it's true, because that's what has been built, is this distorted divine masculinity, and we've had to try to put ourselves into this, like, machine, like, become a cog that isn't necessarily who we are, to fit into this machine. And we just, I think, are realizing that we don't have to be this way, that way, or the other way. It just is, you know, we have to embody who we actually are in our fullness, in our divine masculine, in our divine feminine, and embrace all sides of ourself, and not conform to these ideas that society inflicts upon us in terms of divine, or no, not even divine, but the masculine and the feminine energies. Because even as young kids, they instill all these ideas into us about what it means to be a girl, what it means to be a boy, and it's like, well, you know, maybe I'm not that kind of girl, maybe I'm not that kind of boy, maybe I'm just me, you know, whoever I happen to be. But anyway, Mars is conjunct the South Node right there. Yeah, we'll make a little conjunct symbol. It's kind of a conjunct symbol. All right, but yeah, and you know, this is also possibly speaking of identity, right? So the identities that we have believed ourselves to be may not be who we actually are. And the South Node is helping us to become aware of the ego shell that may not be resonant to who our deeper self is, and our uniqueness, and the unique gift that we have inside of us that we need to share, and to help become more of a piece of the puzzle. See, like, it's funny because I was talking about, like, fitting into the machine, and then something I like to say too is like being a piece of the puzzle. But the beautiful thing about the puzzle is it's a picture that we all imagine the world could be, and we each have a gift within that puzzle that we can provide, so that the whole picture can be brought into reality. And Aquarius is a very objective sign, so it can see the bigger picture, but it also represents our individuality within that picture. So whereas with Capricorn kind of energy, it's like we become these cogs in a wheel, we become the false self, the mask the thing that we have to try to put on in order to function in the machine. And with Aquarius, it's like we have this grand vision of what the world could be, and we just have to provide our piece of the puzzle, which is what our individuality provides. So anyways, there could be some letting go of certain ideas of who we are and what that puzzle piece actually is, and moving into new ways of allowing yourself to be the individual that you already are and were born to be. So, all right, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. Have an awesome time.